Everyone. I am deeply honored and grateful to be with you today and to help celebrate World Kindness Movement's 25th anniversary. And I thank you, Nirmala, for this very kind invitation to share some thoughts around kindness. Helping to inspire kindness and more kindness in the world, in our communities, in our personal lives, has become a passion project for me, with Kindness from the Heart. And there is so much I'd love to share with you, but of course, time is limited. And so in the interest of both time and efficiency, I've written my notes, which I will be referring to. Like many of you, I believe that kindness is a superpower. There are lots of reasons for this, but for now, I'll briefly share just a few. Kindness produces many health benefits for both body and mind. It stimulates the production of serotonin, which helps heal our wounds and puts us in a general state of happiness. Remarkably, kindness boosts serotonin not only in the giver and in the receiver, but also in those who simply witness or even hear about an act of kindness. Remarkable. Kindness produces more oxytocin, which promotes bonding and connection, stimulates trust and generosity, and boosts our immune systems. People who are perpetually kind have a 23% less level of the stress hormone cortisol in their system. They also age slower than the general population. And as someone who just celebrated a milestone birthday this year, I especially appreciate that one. Kindness is a powerful currency to trade in, and it is a universal language that can be spoken and understood by all. It changes hearts and minds, and sometimes when nothing else can. Anyone can wear the superpower cape of kindness. All it takes is intention, a little action, and love. Kindness, like its close friend gratitude, is a circular value. Kindness brings about gratitude, which begets more kindness, which gives rise to more gratitude, and it just goes on and on. Every act of kindness spreads through a 3-degree separation. And I truly believe, as Nirmala said,
oh my gosh, it is so hard.
No, it's that pan you have.
I know, it's my mother's
It is
pan.
this hot. But when I make it, it's, but it's that pan.
My mother's pan.
Yes. Thank you, Mama.
Yeah. Well, it has 3 metal posts on it that rise above the pan this far. And I was talking to my sister in Connecticut one day on FaceTime.
You don't realize.
And I sent her a pan from Amazon and
as Nirmala had said, I truly believe that even a seemingly small act of kindness can unleash an energy that ripples in ways unimagined, touches countless lives, and transcends generations. I'd like to share with you a personal story that helped illuminate for me the power and ripple effect of kindness. And it was just a single act of kindness that started it out, as so often is the case. Several years ago, I was in the midst of a very difficult time in my life, and my world had been turned upside down. A dear friend who lives across the country from me would call on occasion to check in and to see how I was doing and to encourage me. One day, just as we were closing the conversation, Mike asked what I would be doing over the weekend for fun. I shared that Draper Visual Arts Foundation would be hosting its annual art show to showcase local artists. As a member of the foundation's board, I would be helping at the 2-day event. Through a moment of what Mike would later describe as divine inspiration, he said, "I'm going to send you $100. I want you to find a piece of art that you love and buy one for you and one for me. Then we'll have some wonderful shared artwork to talk about." I knew what Mike was doing. While he was helping me to support a local artist, his main goal was to help lift me up and turn my attention outward, and it worked. When I arrived at the art show, I was drawn to a beautiful watercolor painting, and I asked the young artist across the room just how much her painting was. And she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's not for sale. I painted it for my father for Father's Day, but I do have prints for sale." And because I love to learn about the art and the artist, I asked her to tell me about it. I learned that Cornell was just 16 years old and at the age of 3, she had asked her grandfather, who's a professional artist, to teach her how to paint. Her watercolor was of 2 women in Bolivia sitting outside the door. Her father, and here's a, you see that? Her father had captured the scene in a photo during his travels and had asked Gwen to paint it for him. That evening, after considering all of the art I'd seen that day, I knew that it was the print of Gwen's that I wanted to buy for Mike and for me. And I decided to buy one for my daughter, Chelsea, to lift her up as well. The next day at the art show, I asked Gwen if she had sold any of her prints and how many she had. She shook her head sadly and looked down, and she said no, and that she had 5 for sale. So I said, okay, I want to buy 3. And her face absolutely lit up. And she said, are you serious? And when I assured her that I was, I told her about the very kind gesture of my friend, Mike from North Carolina. And I asked if I could video her telling her story about the painting, and I could share that with Mike and my daughter. Gwen recorded a very sweet message, and she wrote a note for each of us to include it with our prints. Following the art show, I noticed that my spirits and sense of well-being had definitely been lifted. It was several days before I had a chance to read the note Gwen had written to me. It touched me deeply, and I'd like to share it with you now. So she'd written it on the back of this little flyer. And here's her sweet message. She said, hey, Jenny, thank you so much for supporting me. I was scared to come because I was intimidated by the great artists that were showing here. You gave me a little extra confidence, and I hope that you start to feel hopeful again. And this is what really got me. I will always remember you as the first person that ever bought any of my art. Thank you so very much, Gwinnell. And she drew a little heart like a 16-year-old girl would do. A month later, I traveled from my home in Utah to a personal development retreat in Colorado, and I shared the story of Mike's kind initiative and showed the photo of Gwen and her painting, and I think I shared the video too. 5 of the attendees shot up their hands and asked if they could order a print. It was such a delight for me to call Gwen to let her know that some wonderful human beings across the country loved her art and that she sold 5 more prints. Several months after that, I stopped by Gwen's home to see more of her artwork and to ask for her permission to share our story when I spoke about the impact of kindness. I met Gwen's parents, and through tears, her mother told me how much the experience had meant to her daughter, that Gwen had been struggling at the time with some health issues and some other issues. Gwen and her mom shared how being a part of my initiative to lift me up, given them such a tremendous boost. And Gwen's confidence continued to grow. I've thought many times about the powerful impact of that moment, in that moment when Mike decided to listen to inspiration and he chose to act on it. He had no idea where the act of kindness would lead and who might ultimately be touched by it. He simply wanted to lift up a friend in need. And as it turns out, the ripples continue. Mike's kind and compassionate offering brought me joy in the moment and in the days and months ahead as I got to know Gwen and her beautiful art. Who knew that sharing Gwen's artwork would become part of my heart work? Gwen's painting is bringing joy and beauty to homes across the US where her work would have otherwise remained unknown. And we may never know the boost of what the boost of confidence did for Gwen when she was at a difficult time in her life, and how it will ultimately change her life. Perhaps if she had not sold any of her prints, she would have lost the courage and confidence to show her art. Perhaps she'll become a professional artist like her grandfather. And perhaps the experience will help one day to inform the way she parents her own children when they are having moments of self-doubt or lacking confidence. I do know that my active confidence touched and inspired the lives of many, and that ripple continues on. There's someone else who understands both the ripple and exponential effect of a seemingly small act of kindness, and it's my friend, Brad Aronson. And Brad has written this really, really wonderful book. It's called Humankind, Changing the World One Small Act at a Time. And this beautifully written book is really uplifting, it is life affirming, and incredibly actionable. Brad shares dozens of ways that we can make the difference in someone else's life through simple words and deeds. And he shares story after story of small acts that had a big impact. Like the one about Jimmy, a young boy who was embarrassed he couldn't tie his shoes because he'd been born with only one hand. Jimmy's caring and kind third grade teacher, Mr. Clarkson, taught himself how to tie a shoe one-handed so he could quietly teach Jimmy. And that was a turning point for the boy, who came to believe that he'd always be able to find a solution for whatever problems he faced. Jim Abbott grew up to win an Olympic gold medal as part of the American baseball team. He played Major League Baseball. He pitched a no-hitter. He wrote a best-selling memoir and touched the lives of thousands of people through his inspirational talks and volunteerism. And he continues to inspire countless children with disabilities to believe in themselves. And that was spurred from that third grade teacher and that kind act. And there's the young woman who was inspired to start Cards for Hospitalized Kids after receiving a handmade card from a kind hospital volunteer. It brightened her day during one particularly difficult hospital stay when she was a child. Jen Rubino said, "When I got the card, I felt I was not forgotten and people were thinking of me. That is what I want to do for other kids." So far, Cards for Hospitalized Kids has delivered well over 100,000 cards. Like me, Brad believes that kindness is a superpower. As he shared just last week, anyone can use kindness to change a life. You only need love. May we all put on our capes and look for ways to choose and act with our superpower that is kindness from the heart. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you, World Kindness Movement, for all that you're doing to bring about a better, happier, more beautiful, and kinder world. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny, for sharing from the heart with those real life stories. Stories always inspire because they somehow move us to do something ourselves. And I think your sharing just moved all of us in this room right now. Thank you. To all of us.